2024 is shaping up to be a terrible year for gaming, which is to say that the industry is on fire and everything is going to suck for a while because of it. The simple truth is that games are getting progressively more expensive to make, and higher dev cost means more sales needed to break even. And more sales needed to break even means that games need to be overwhelmingly popular and successful for them to be considered worthwhile. And I like expensive, high production value cinematic video games as much as the next guy, but trying to be a studio that focuses only on titles like that is a fool's errand. Case in point, Spider-Man 2 for the PS5 cost $300 million to make, triple the price of the first Spider-Man. And the biggest critique that people left that game with is that it was half-baked, with cut content in the files pointing towards larger plans for the story and several key features missing at launch. Game studios are being forced to grind their workers to the bone, lest they too become victims of the industry-wide mass layoffs that are becoming more and more commonplace across the gaming landscape. The future of gaming, as I see it right now, is undeniably bleak. While 2022 and 23 are undoubtedly going to be heralded as the time that bred some modern classics for years to come, 2024 is going to be known as the year that everyone noticed there was a problem. PlayStation is currently panicking and debating moving up the release date of the PlayStation 6 because PS5s aren't moving and they have no major system-selling games planned for 2024. Xbox is pivoting away from hardware exclusives and instead doubling down on their subscription service, Xbox Game Pass, which admittedly has a great value, but it's still a subscription service and thus doesn't really bode confidence. And Nintendo is clearly building towards the successor of the Nintendo Switch. And this, in combination with the fact that they're likely still on cooldown from releasing like 5 major tentpole franchise entries last year, is resulting in what looks to be a pretty barren 2024. It feels like after March, we don't have a very good idea of what's hitting store shelves. And the games we know for sure are coming out are older titles being put onto new platforms, low-risk remakes and remasters, and smaller-scale titles because nobody has any money! And the people who do have money are putting it in other places. Games are getting infinitely more expensive with no obvious quality jumps to justify that price, and workers are being fired en masse. Eventually something is going to have to give, and big studios are already prepping. Sony wants to split up games into 3 parts and charge $50 each, Rockstar wants to charge players per hour played, and Ubisoft wants us to be comfortable not actually owning our games. These studio bigwigs want critically acclaimed successes or endlessly flowing cash spouts, but you can almost guarantee that every time one of these succeeds, they learn the complete wrong lesson from it. Fortnite paved the way for live service gaming as we know it, but instead of offering a competitive, ever-changing experience with endless replayability, big studios saw eye-catching crossovers, battle royale, and item shops as the big takeaways from why people liked Fortnite. That's why we keep getting these games that feel like they were pivoted into terrible live service shenanigans halfway through development. Instead of taking the risk to make a genuinely good game that might not resonate with audiences, might as well make it into a shitty live service one, so the few people who do play our game and find some form of enjoyment in it will spend all of their money on it. And not only is this pretty bad for all of us consumers, but it's especially bad for the smaller devs and creators attached to the hips of these larger suits who drag them unwillingly into the wrong side of a conflict. It makes the general vibe of the gaming community feel so much worse. My social media feeds lately have seen many a game dev celebrating, proud of their work, and then inevitably some guy in the comments starts flaming them for predatory business decisions they almost assuredly had no part in. The gaming community has become a far more negative space to occupy lately for that very reason. It doesn't feel like there's any love left. Not for the hobby, not for the people in charge, and especially not for each other. Gaming criticism is the most toxic and inescapable hell of discourse that I have ever had the pleasure of willingly partaking in. Call Console wars are raging once again, except this time there is a genuine fear that if Xbox doesn't outsell Sony, they'll just stop making Xboxes. Games aren't fun escapes for people anymore. Games are jobs. Games require you to sink so much time into them and have no respect for the player. They're either actively seeking your wallet or too busy huffing their own farts to realize that maybe this didn't need to cost $220 million. Fortnite, I love it. It's a job. Unless you're playing every single day or using some form of XP glitch, you're not getting all the bonus items in the battle pass. Fortnite gives out dopamine hits in the form of little digital collectibles as a means to keep you playing, but when they require you work really hard to get these items, it becomes work. The Battle Pass has gone from something that enhances idle consumption to something where every time I log in, I have to check an itemized list of tasks and complete them with maximum efficiency, or else I feel like I'm wasting my time. But these live service games, they want you to waste that time, because if you waste a lot of time, you have more time looking at other players using those items you might want, and you might want them so bad that you outright skip the grinding and just pay for the cool items instead. And even if you don't lose your integrity and grind out those items for yourself and wear them proudly, you are now the guy that other people are looking at to feed their addiction. There is no winning. Even over in the single player games, they're selling costume packs now. And you know what? Maybe you want the costume packs. I'm not one to yuck another man's yum, but you can almost assuredly guarantee that they're going to do that wrong too. Maybe the costumes will look dumb and stupid, or maybe all the costumes are only for the avatar character that can only be played in one side mode. But nobody cares, because customer satisfaction doesn't matter when you have customer money. It doesn't matter if 99% of people don't partake in whatever microtransactions, because the 1% that do are offsetting the cost of making that option available. Sometimes it feels like there is genuinely no hope for us to return to a gaming landscape that isn't actively trying to leech off of its players. But there is a light in the tunnel. A light called Nintendo. Nintendo is a company that has done a lot of things that warrant valid criticism, but let's be charitable here, because where they are now is light years ahead of where they were. 10 years ago, you could not upload any footage of a Wii U game because Nintendo would automatically copyright strike any of their game music heard in a YouTube video. Now, people are making careers off of uploading uninterrupted gameplay segments of Nintendo games. Nintendo famously has a stick up their ass when it comes to following modern gaming conventions. But recently, albeit slowly, they have been coming around. Turns out, after years of doubling down on archaic practices and losing money with the Wii U, they had to make big changes. Big changes in the form of one of the most successful gaming consoles of all time. A very successful gaming console that has a massive library of exclusives, most of which delivering exactly what they promised on day one. There's a lot that didn't, but we don't talk about those. And all of these critical darlings were released without breaking Nintendo's principles. There's no battle pass, there's no microtransactions, the remakes feel like labors of love with lots of effort behind them, and the titles that do deserve scrutiny look like fucking masterpieces compared to the worst of another studio's lineup. In the context of Nintendo being this consistent source of quality for their first-party titles, it's easy to forget that they had to fail to get here. Fail bad. Fail for like 7 years straight bad. And to my untrained eyes, it looks like the industry as a whole is going down that same route. These crazy hyper-monetized initiatives to make every game into a quadruple A live service experience isn't going to pay off. Even right now, they can't compete. It's not lost on me the irony that two of the favorite titles of the year so far are Palworld and Helldivers 2. Both of which are smaller scale sub-$60 titles that don't have a heavy focus on concurrent revenue streams and have done absolute gangbusters in comparison to The Last of Us Part 2 remake, which, might I remind you, is one half of the PlayStation lineup dropping this year. And while they may try to nickel and dime every penny out of their audience before it happens, eventually these big producers are going to have to try and earn back the goodwill of gamers. And this is why I am a firm believer that things things will get better. In the gaming world, a lot of the best experiences we have only became good after they were demonstrable failures and had to be rebuilt. These studios, they're in their Wii U eras now, but soon enough, we'll get their Switch eras. Until then, you know the deal. Vote with your wallet, support indie games, talk about the games you love because social following is important, and maybe for the rest of 2024, it's time to tackle some of the games in your backlog. For me, I think 2024 is the year I am finally gonna play Persona 5. Just after I finish Fire Emblem and Baldur's Gate and the Splatoon DLC. Okay, you know what? Maybe not, but at least I'll make an effort. See ya!